I can't hear Vicky very well. No. That's good. Who are you? I can hear you.
So are we supposed to be able to see everybody or just like 5 people? Danny, I can barely hear you.
Yeah. Yep.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, I can't see.
Call to order the special board meeting of Monday, November 23rd at 5 p.m. Clerk Barry, please call the roll.
Supervisor Echevetti.
Here.
Treasurer Elliott.
Here.
Trustee DeMink.
Here.
Trustee Vosberg.
Here.
Trustee Anderson.
Here.
Trustee Joseph. Clerk Barry is here. I do not have Trustee Joseph recorded as being present.
If he arrives here later in the Zoom meeting, we'll let him in and
Yes, we will
record.
note his arrival or his the time that he came online to the Zoom meeting.
Okay, we got the entire team here. Item number 3 is, if I can figure out how to shrink that. Item number 3 of the agenda, this is a special budget work group. Item number 3, Board of Trustees discussion and review of the proposed fiscal year 2021 budget. And I'm going to turn it over to Director Bauer.
Perfect, thank you. Look on this here. All right, so I guess I want to start by saying thank you to everybody. This is the first time that we've ever done a budget like this. I appreciate everybody's willingness and input. So we're going to go over our budget objectives for today's meeting. We're going to look at where we are on the budget timeline. We're going to review our significant fund items or changes from prior year. We're going to review our fund balance history and then answer any remaining questions. Our annual budget process. Right now we're in the 4th quarter. How have we gotten here? The department heads have provided all the budgeted numbers needed. We've had one-on-ones with each department head. We had an SAD estimate of cost held for public safety. We've had multiple inter-department or inter-office meetings. We've also had the first budget workshop that was on November 9th. So today is our second budget workshop. We will also be on that 4th quarter column looking at the final budget amendments. Okay, so Dan is touching the mouse, and there we go. Okay. We're back on track. All right. So, did you do that on purpose? Okay. So now we're looking at our 2021 significant changes. You can see in general fund, we have 2 new departments for 2021, which is our Administrative Services Department and our Information Technology Department. We have a combined Leisure Services, that was our old Senior Center and Parks and Rec departments. They were combined in the previous year, but not by department. They had 2 separate departments. In 2021, they will all be in one department. And then general fund, assigned fund balance stabilization is going to be 30% of current year's total expenditures. That's something that will show up in the financial statements. For public safety, we have 2 new officers creating a traffic services unit. We have the continued development of our administrative department. And we have some capital purchases, maybe not as much as we had in the previous year, but the one significant one is our fire truck. And of course, that's always the pretty picture, so we use that. Our water and sewer department, we have a new bond debt. The total debt for that, for principal and interest, is $3,587,000 approximately, so you'll see that coming on in 2021. The new capital charges and connection fee ordinances that the board and the water and sewer department have been working on, those are reflected in the budget, so we have changed some of the wording for the revenues, and the ordinance fees that would be collected will show in the budget. And of course, they have significant capital investment, which we will get into. I also wanted to make note of our Fund 677, which is our health care savings fund. It is not a budgeted fund. It's an inter-service departmental fund. This is our second year. 2020 was our second year having it. It has a year-to-date fund balance of approximately $1,457,000. And that actually, as we go through when we talk about medical and in future meetings, that's a fund that's going to come up in all of our discussions. Okay, so this is just a budget draft summary of all the different funds. We have 6 total funds that we're budgeting for. The first top 4 are our modified accrual funds, and the bottom 2 are enterprise, which are full accrual, which records depreciation. You can see that in the parentheses, that's actually the department number. So when you see the revenue and expenditure reports that come out and it says, Fund 101, that's our general fund. We'll be going over these in the next couple slides more in depth. All right, so general fund has a total of 23 departments in it. This slide here shows the 23 departments and the respective 2021 budgeted expense for them. You'll see that the facilities and operations is our largest department by expenditures, and then general administration is number 2. Keep in mind when we're doing our budgets, the departments are budgeted by department total. So that becomes important as you go through the year. All right, so I'm going to re-highlight some of what was reviewed on our November 9th meeting, because this meeting here is going to be live streamed and available to the public. So a small amount will be, re-reviewed. This slide here is showing our revenues, appropriations or expenses, and then our net position.
Closer to your microphone, please.
Closer to the microphone. All right. Better? Better. Okay. All right. So as you can see, this slide's really trying to represent what capital. The list of all the capital for all the different. Is it not working? All right. Now I have 2. Okay, you can hear me. I have 2 microphones and then a little silver one, so I feel famous right now. Okay, so moving to talking about capital still. Okay, what's important about it? Everybody had the entire listing under the capital tab for all of general fund, all of the funds actually. This here is a snippet of what general fund's capital is. So on the left-hand side, when you can see the net position is $1,980,000 to the negative, of that appropriation, so that $10 million, that second line, that second number, $2,227,000 is capital, sometimes one-time capital. That's important when looking at the budget. If that wasn't there, our net operating position would be $247,000 to the good. This here is our general fund revenue breakdown. I know we have seen this in the past, but just showing it again. Our largest is our state shared revenue, followed by our tax collections at 16%. Keeping with that trend, I did the same thing for all of the funds so we could see how capital intermixes with the net position. So for public safety, we're close to a break even at a negative $23,000, but our one-time capital is about $970,000. You'll see the fire truck on there, different vehicle purchases. Taking that out, we have a net operating position of approximately $947,000. All right, another slide for public safety, or Fund 205. That's the property tax revenue, or how much we collect from, or our millage rate. You can see through 2014 to current. 2014 was about 8.25% for our mills. And in the last 19 and 20, and then this year, it's the 7.95. Now, what does that mean in the big scheme of things? That 7.95 is that tax collections at 93% of total revenue for public safety. Here's our building fund. Our building fund is meant to break even. You can see we come very close to that. We don't have any capital projected for 2021. The building fund's revenue is 98% of it actually comes from permits. Either it's a building permit, electrical, heating, or plumbing, but its primary function is building permits, and it shows in their graph. Next, we have our Fund 508, which is our leisure services. We have a small loss showing at approximately $4,000. Their one-time capital, though, for field and electronic entry sign is about $30,000. So that puts us at an operating position of $25,125. All right, so if you recall back on a couple of slides ago, we were talking about the modified accrual, which is the ones that we just talked about, The last two, which are not required legally to be budgeted, we do budget them just because it is a better control. We like to be transparent and make sure that we have a lot of different discussions on where we're going with our funds and money. But what makes them different, again, is it's a full accrual. So when you're looking at this, it shows the same format, but the numbers really represent something different. So we have the revenues of $502,000 and appropriations of approximately $291,000. But in that $291,000, depreciation is included, but capital, what we purchase, is not. So this is like your typical business, McDonald's, any corporation out there where they would not expense capital. Brandenburg Park and Water and Sewer Fund are required to be treated like businesses. So in doing so, that's why this is done. But we do want to show what capital they're planning. So again, the capital isn't something that we are expensing as a budget line item, but it is part of our overall plan and good management. So our capital listing is to the right there, and they're planning on spending one-time capital of $837,947. My clicker's broke, Dan. All right, my clicker is working again. So that same process that we were talking about with Brandenburg, again, is in 591, or Water and Sewer. You can see its net position is a negative $405,000. Their capital projects are approximately $2,800,000. The nice thing about this fund, it is a large fund. Kevin is going to be going over some of the capital in a little bit more detail, but I want to go to our next slide that shows the revenue breakdown. You're going to see that 88% of the total revenue for water and sewer is from our water and sewer sales. All right, so here's a slide on our fund balance history. These are all of our modified accrual. Modified accrual doesn't equate exactly to cash, but it's pretty darn close. You can see that it has general fund, building, leisure services, and public safety. Public safety is shown a little bit differently because prior to 2018, it was police, fire, equipment, and fire. And in order to show like a representative where we were and where we are, they were separate before there, and now they're shown as one line item. But I have in this schedule or graph from 2012, and you can see like the fund balance and general fund. 2012 is that $9,507,000. And you can kind of go through all the different, every year it's gain or loss. Comes up to where we were in 2019. That's the last stuff that was not highlighted in blue. That's because everything not highlighted in blue has been audited. It is a fixed number and is not going to change. The items in blue are subject to change, which makes sense because 2020, we're still in the middle of 2000 or towards the end of 2020, but still are in 2020. And so that number is going to change. So we used the budgeted number. Obviously, as we close out the year, that number will become audited and fixed. And then we have what we currently have estimated in our budget for 2021. As we make changes prior to the December 8th, that number will change. But looking at the very bottom line item, for general fund, we have a fund balance of $7,950,000 approximately. Building department, we have $124,000. Leisure services, approximately $520,000. And then public safety, approximately $6,920,000.
I have a question about the balances. Can I ask it now, or you want me to wait till the end?
Actually, I'm really close to the end of mine, so go ahead and ask it now.
All right, are there recommended amounts for fund balances?
So that's a very good question. That really depends on the municipal and what different projects it has going on. That is something that Dan and I have discussed in length. We do have, so that one, on that one slide, I'm kind of going back to that budget stabilization slide. A lot of municipals, we have 30% of our yearly expenditures. That is set aside as a minimum fund balance. So in the financial statements, it was also for 2019, it was also set aside at 30%, which was, I think it was approximately 2,500,000 as our lower limit that we could not get into. I've seen some municipals as low as 10 or 15%. There are other things where you could start setting money aside for capital as your capital plan develops, and let's say we were doing something extremely large, you can increase it based on that. But I do look forward to this year, as like I said, Dan and I discussed, we're going to make it a little bit more complex versus just taking the 30% of expenditures. We're going to have it more of a formula based. Does that help, or do you have any other additional questions?
It was hard to hear everything you said.
Oh, no.
It sounds like we're above minimum.
Yes, we
but
absolutely.
And who's minimum?
So we have set is that better, Kathy?
Yes.
Okay, so we have set a reserve fund balance of 30% of yearly expenditures. So that is, the standards are between like 15 and 30 is reasonable. Sometimes we can put in more as we have needs that develop in the future.
Okay, so 15 to 30%, just regular type operating things. Perhaps you could justify more if we saw some need coming up.
Correct.
Okay. And who sets that amount, the 15 to 30?
So those are recommended percentages. We as
Recommended by whom?
Our auditors or actually industry standards, but the board can set that rate, which is why, that's something that we do talk about, that 30%. We have in general fund a healthy fund balance. So, 30% is, again, industry average, but I don't know how you guys feel about that.
Well, that's probably, I'd rather be on the high side than lower. It's probably a different discussion for another day. I just wondered how that, and then, so the board does determine what that will be?
Between myself and the board, depending on if the board wants to set, the thing is you have to be careful if the board sets a policy that, like, depending on how, if by resolution, then it is stuck, we cannot use that money for anything else. But that is something, Kathy, I do believe this year we will get into a little bit more with more of a formula-driven reserve.
Great. All right, thank you. You can go on. You've answered more than enough. Thank you, I appreciate it.
No problem. Actually, so like I said, I was really close to the end of my portion of it. I did want to thank, the board. You guys put a lot of time and effort into it. I've had several board members come in and sit down and talk and go over it with me. I appreciate everybody's hard work. You guys do put a lot of effort into this, and again, I appreciate it. The department heads also, a lot of hard work goes into it. Karen, out in my department, she spends a ton of time with it with me, so I appreciate her. And Dan, again, Dan and I spend a ton of time looking at this to make sure it is the best possible budget. And then one of the things that we have done is we have taken this budget and put it for, like the budget award, and really keep developing it year to year. And so this doesn't happen just by, one person. So I want to just take a second just to thank everybody that puts all that effort in. Now, I wanted to open for questions. I wanted to remind everybody before I do that the 21 budget will be on the December 8th board meeting. And then if any additional questions come up between now and then, please let me know. We are definitely here to help. I know that in between time, what I've been doing is if there is any changes, I'm just going to come up with an example. If, Brad says, hey, something new information just came up, I'm gonna have this grant that comes in, I will do what I've been doing, is sending out an email to everybody to let them know that we're going to change the budget to reflect, you know, the most up-to-date thing, and we will continue to do that all the way up until the December 8th meeting. But I keep everybody absolutely apprised of everything that's going on, and we highlight any changes. That way it's not like a new budget every couple days. That's all I have. Is there any questions?
What I think I'm going to do is, I got to move the microphones back over by me, is move to have Kevin do his presentation, and then we can open it up to all the department heads and for questions, especially because it doesn't seem like there's any on Vicky's presentation right now. So Kevin, I am going to drive your presentation that you forwarded over, and let me know. I'll do the best I can to keep up with you. Can everybody still hear? Don't say yes, just say something if you can't hear. All right.
All right, so just real quick, Dan, because you're not in presentation mode, just if you look on the left, any of the slides that are crossed off, the numbers crossed off, you can skip those slides. Those are meant to be skipped. So when you're pushing through, you can skip those slides because you're not in full presentation mode.
Way to trick me up a little bit.
It's all good. It's all good. So
Okay.
you can go to number 26 if you want to start then, like 2 slides down. Perfect. So just a couple quick things because Vicky covered a few of these slides, so it'll go quicker than planned. So this one just kind of shows an update of our organization chart. The inspector, our 2 water and sewer inspectors are now under the engineering department. They were usually in our operations. So now, instead of it coming directly from water and sewer, it's going to be getting paid out through general administration. So that's why when you guys see an increase in that cost, those wages are coming out of that general administration now as opposed to straight out of water and sewer fund. And if I'm saying that wrong, Vicki, please correct me because I want to make sure I'm not causing you any grief if I'm wording that incorrectly. Next slide, please. So this is, as Vicki talked about in the last meeting, we have our big 4 accounts that deal with the revenue that we get from the water bills, water and sewer bills, and also the 2 expense accounts that we have to pay for Great Lakes Water for the water, and then OMID or Macomb County for our sewer treatment. This just kind of gives you the top of the slide, kind of gives you an idea of the breakdown of how all the bills are. So Great Lakes Water, they charge us on a 60% fixed and 40% commodity basis, which means 60% of the cost that they expect us to pay, we have to pay no matter how much water we use. 40% of that, it comes out of how much water we use. So the less water that we use, the less money that Great Lakes charges us from the commodity perspective. We are required by our contract to pay for 50% of the water that is in our contract. That is, we'll never go under that amount. So that's a standard. We're typically around the 100% mark every single year, maybe a little bit lower. Past few years we've been over, but overall, I just want to give you an idea of how the Great Lakes water bills are broken down. On the sewer side, it's 100% fixed. So no matter how much sewer goes into the system, it's 100% fixed. So whatever we got the bill is, it's paid out at 100%. So no matter how much sewer goes through, there's a set amount that we got to pay. Through those funds, what our department anticipates is a 5% increase in the Great Lakes water bill every year, and then an estimated 5% increase in OMID as well. That's the Oklahoma-Macomb Interceptor District, where our sewer feeds from our system to the Macomb Interceptor District, then to OMID, and then eventually to Detroit where they treat the water. And then 3% increase in the industrial waste charge, which is any industrial user. It's a specific charge. It's a pass-through from the township. It's strictly a pass-through from Great Lakes to each industrial user. And we anticipate 3% increase on that every year. That's usually around $12,000 a month for the industrial waste charge. And then how we based the revenue, We base it on roughly 22,000 equivalent meters in our system. That's every size meter based on an equivalent meter ratio that I kind of talked about at the one board meeting regarding our ordinance changes. It's taking that ratio and putting it towards our meters. So that's roughly how many meters we have, equivalent meters in our system. If anybody has any questions on that in the future, I'd be happy to sit down and discuss how that we could come to that number. We expect to add 160 new homes throughout the year, and then we estimate an average of 56,000 gallons per meter per year, for use. That's how we get our numbers. And that accounts for a 5% water loss is what we anticipate every year. And then 10% of our total usage comes by way of irrigation and not first meter. It's a lot of information, so if I want to do questions as we go, or if there's questions at the end, feel free to interrupt me if need be. Go ahead and go to the next slide, Dan. Vicki kind of already touched on this with her fantastic pie chart, but basically this just kind of shows that in a nutshell that, roughly 89% of our revenue comes from water and sewer bills, and then 52% of our expense comes from our Great Lakes and OMID bills that we pay them for water and sewer usage. So quite a hefty sum. You can go to slide 34 now. So this is the fun part for me. So the great thing about our department is and since Dan's come in, we've really had a heavy focus on technology. I know Clerk Barry worked heavily to get Laserfish into our system here as well, which has been a huge benefit for us overall. But Laserfish is our main hub for all of our database for all of our digital documentation. So through that, all these arrows kind of show how all of our technology works together. So our ArcGIS is working with Cederu, which is also working with Laserfish. BSNA, anytime we're dealing with utility billing and a customer has a concern or a question, we can pull up through Laserfish to see files. Invoice Cloud for payments, that ties to BSNA, also to Laserfish, and then Mystig. It all goes together in this not so nice, neat package, but they're all very useful and they talk to each other on a regular basis. And an exciting thing that we're looking at is our engineering department and the inspectors are looking at this software called PlanGrid. One of our main focuses is we'll try to go paperless in the field so we can be doing an inspector's copy and making notes in the field on a tablet versus having to bring a piece of paper out and then trying to draw with a marker in 0-degree weather. Now you can use a stylus and mark on the tablet with ease. And this PlanGrid is a thing we're testing out right now. We haven't paid for it yet. We're still in the testing phase. We're kind of looking at that, and we're kind of looking at Bluebeam to see what makes sense. But right now, in terms of ease of use, it looks like PlanGrid is going to be the winner. But we're going to be sitting down with our inspectors to find out what makes sense for them. But this gives you an overall idea of what software we're using in the field and how we're using it. Cederu is our asset management software program. And eventually, at some point, I'm going to sit down and do a brief presentation with the board to get an idea of how all this works and what we can do with it, because it's really fantastic software that will go a long way. Next slide, please, Dan. This is the bond debt that Vicki was talking about, that we're going to be coming up on a OMID bond that they told us about earlier this year. It's going to be starting on January 1. I know it, and when the Township Board initially made a payment on, I remember the date, but there was a date earlier this year, I'm gonna say it was August sometime, we paid $1 million towards the loan amount to pay this down $1 million. And so our loan amount's roughly $2.7 million. And so what this is kind of showing is basically the debt that's gonna be involved. And if we were to add this to our water rates, this is what it would look like. We kind of shared this with the board back in August. The loan amount has decreased a little bit since the initial expectation. So just in a nutshell, based on equivalent meters and such, our current sewer ready to serve charge is $15.09 per quarter. That is a fixed charge that a resident pays every single quarter. So if we were to take this loan amount and apply it towards our ready to serve charge, we'd be adding $2.03 to the ready to serve charge for the life of this bond to cover the cost of it moving forward. Now, even though this bond is starting on January 1, there is only, I believe, and Vicky, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there's a small interest payment in January, and the hefty principal payment starts in July. So that, this, along with the Great Lakes water rates and the OMID sewer rates, will all be coming to a head in July. So this will be one of three pieces that will be getting increased coming July 1. And just keep in mind, we did have an increase from Great Lakes Water back on July 1st of this year for our water and our sewer. They forgave, July through December. An increase is going to be coming in January, which the board did not move forward on a rate increase on that either. So we're not anticipating increasing on that, but moving forward, we plan on taking the 2021 increase for water and sewer, as well as this, to the board in June for approval. So let's just kind of give you an initial heads up on the increase we're expecting just for this bond payment. Next slide, please, Dan.
Kevin, I have a question on the bonds.
Yes.
Who authorized the bonds?
The Macomb County and OMID, it's their bond. They were the one that did the bond.
So Macomb County Public Works
Yes. Yes.
probably had to be okay. And
Yes.
so this isn't, it's being used on our stuff, so we have to help pay for it, but we have not actually bonded ourselves. The township is not bonded on this, correct?
Correct. You are correct.
So Kathy, can you hear me, Kathy?
Yes.
Okay, so we did not go and do the bond issue ourselves, but it is treated as our portion of a bond, meaning it reflects in our financial statements as our bond, it reflects in our bond rating as our bond, and, so yes, we have several, so of all of the different financial statement, or bonds that we have, I think we have just the water and sewer building that we specifically bonded out for, but the vast majority of them are ones that are passed down. And we typically don't know that we're getting them until I receive an invoice. So,
Okay, so
go ahead.
that was part, because the reason I'm asking is I don't remember authorizing it. And then the other is, that's interesting that does impact our own bond rating.
It does.
Did it change any?
So far, our bond rating has not gone down. We do a very good job of, keeping our cash flow and everything like that pretty reasonable. We do have to look at, in the future, how many more bonds that we would get. If we want to bond something out, it definitely will impact that, because when your rating agency looks at your debt, debt to equity, all that stuff, those are in there. So when you look, actually, if you pulled up any one of our financial statements, you will see all of them in the past. And actually online, through Munitrex, we put all of our bond stuff on there, so any resident or board member can go through that software or that system and actually look at the details, the amortization schedule of them. But yeah, it's challenging, to say the least, when we don't know exactly what bonds we're gonna get, literally until the payment is upon us. This one here, we did get a little bit of a forewarning, because they did give us the option to prepay any of the bond that we wanted to.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so just a reminder, Kathy, so last year, early 2019, the county came to us with a two-portion bond. There was a $12 million section and there was an $80 million section. There was $88 million. We paid our portion of the $12 million last year in full. I think it was to the tune of $700,000. I don't remember the exact number. We came to that, understanding this bond was going to be coming due this year. So we kind of had a heads up, like Vicky said, we kind of had a little bit of a heads up. But so we kind of anticipated this coming down the pike.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, so we're 7% of like 88 million. So our portion is like, we're 7% or something roughly of the system, so that, of the OMID system. So that's where that number comes in.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. This slide, so like I mentioned at the last board meeting, we did a connection fee study, and we're getting all these ordinances changed and passed. And so we're getting a clear and more concise focus of basing our philosophy on meter size and capacity of our system versus by building size, which is kind of an antiquated process. Along with that, in speaking with Attorney Siebert and Plant Moran, plant brands, one of our main focuses is making sure that we are properly taking our water rates and we're applying them appropriately. And obviously, we all have the intention to do that. It's absolutely, there's no doubt in our minds. But what we want to do is, our goal is moving forward here is we're going to attempt a rate study in 2021, not so much to focusing on water rates per se, but to making sure that the funds are being appropriated in the proper areas, and that the proper areas are being funded accordingly. So the study obviously will focus on the appropriations of stuff. What will come to light possibly is if we are over or underfunded in some areas, that's going to be a potential thing, absolutely. But our main goal is making sure that we're not, overcharging residents. We're not, applying a same payment twice or double dipping, things of that nature. We want to make sure we're doing what's right for the residents and what's right overall for the department and the township. Some of the language below, I won't go into all the details below, but I pulled some language from, there was 4 or 5 different water rates I found from like Flint, there was Marquette and a few others that were doing water rate studies, and everyone had these bottom 5 bullet points in there of what their focus was on them. So it seems like it's a fair, it's making sure we're following Bolt versus Lansing, obviously Headley Amendment, things like that. We're going to follow the state guidelines, making sure we're doing the appropriate measures, using our funds in the appropriate way. So that's kind of what that language just has in a nutshell. But, we'll create a QBS team. We'll bring this to the board and hopefully, get a good outcome, and all of our parties will be happy. Auditors, legal, we'll all be on the same page and good moving forward. Next slide, please, Dan. So yeah, this one, Vicki had a great list on her thing too. So I don't know if I got to go into it too much. It was just kind of a list of our capital projects, what we're working on for 2021. I don't know if I want to go into too much detail, but essentially the 25.5 PRV station and the 23 emergency water main repair, those projects were expected to happen all in 2020, but are going to bleed over a little bit into 2021. So we have some funds set aside for that. Same for the sewer rehab, open cut and CIPP. We have $10,500 for that, moving over from 2020 to 2021. But everything else is set to move forward. I'd be happy to answer any questions on those projects if somebody has one in general, but me sitting down and talking with each one, we could be here for about 2 hours. So unless you guys want me to do that, I'd be happy to. Next slide, please, Dan. And this is just our equipment. So we're looking, one of the most important ones is the multi-purpose vehicle. So we have a vehicle that we take out on every water break. It holds all of our clamps and our equipment, our brass. We call it the sweat van here because we know when it goes out, you're going to sweat. So that's what we kind of call it for in jest. But we're looking to purchase that and get some, new generators and things of that nature, because that vehicle is pushing 30 to 35 years old, and it's already got a dog, it's leaning and all that good stuff. So it needs to be replaced. Looking to replace another dump truck. Those are probably the 2 most expensive ones. One more vehicle, one more van, and a boring machine, which will be needed for a while. So like Vicki said, total cost for capital we're looking at is $2.8 million. So if there's any questions on that, I'd be happy to answer. I think I have one more slide, Dan. That might be it. Oh yeah. And the last thing I wanted to just bring up was garbage carts. So we started this program in 2019 for purchasing garbage carts for residents, or for residents to purchase garbage carts from the township. So this just kind of gives in a nutshell how many carts we've purchased and sold in 2019 and 20, and showing our ending inventory as of November 18th. We've had pretty good success on people wanting to buy these carts. It seems like it's been very receptive. So you guys will be seeing at one of the next board meetings, I'll be looking to get another 196 gallon, 50, 64 gallon trash and 164 gallon recycling cans. But we're selling on average, for anywhere from 100 to 200 carts every month. So it's been going pretty good. So if there's any questions on that, but I just want to give a snapshot on that because we haven't talked about that in a while. That's all I had.
Kevin, real quick, I noticed on that prior slide, you had a $60,000 brush hog. What kind of brush hog is that?
Well, I know our tractor is, one of the tractors is leaking fluid bad and just needs to be replaced. It would just be a standard brush hog in the back, but the tractor itself, it's basically the tractor needed to buy. We just call it the brush hog tractor.
Okay,
That's
so yeah, because that's why I saw brush, so you're talking a tractor and a brush hog is what we're
Yes.
talking about.
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for clarifying. I appreciate that.
Okay, we've come to the point in the presentation for questions and open discussion. Anybody from any electeds or department heads? We're all here. We have, what do we have, 2 weeks. We will be having the public hearing on the budget, and I will be pushing or requesting the budget get passed at that December 8th board meeting. So we have quite a bit of time in between now and then to dive down into any specifics. The budget book, if there's been any changes or updates there, or any questions, you can get into any general ledger line item with Vicki. And I'll see if anybody has any questions specific to this agenda item. We do have a board comment and a public comment part of the agenda as well. Kathy?
I have a couple questions. They're not of the numbers themselves, it's just more general. Like, how do we calculate the administrative cost of benefits for employees? I don't need the equation, just a big picture of how we do that, because now all those costs are under admin and where they used to be under the department. So I'm wondering how we do that when we're applying for grants, let's say, or any other services we might provide, that administrative cost needs to be factored in.
Vicki?
Can I clarify that a little bit? I'm not sure. Are you talking about the administrative service fee that we charge the different departments? Or are you talking about just how we calculate the overages per department on their particular medical costs and stuff?
Yeah, Vicki, I'm having trouble hearing what you're saying, but what it's more, say if we apply for a grant, especially when we are allowed to collect an administrative fee, how do we calculate what that administrative fee might be? Does it include the cost of benefits for employees?
Okay, I'm feeling, okay, so the question of grants, each grant is a little bit different. So, like the Stone Garden grant that the PD does, they have a formula that we are given that we would fill out. So that one would relate to medical and OPEB. It will specifically list out those costs. So every grant, we go back to the granting documentation, see what is allowed to be included as an administrative percentage for overhead or employee benefits, and apply that to the raw numbers that we know each employee has.
Okay, that helps a lot. Yeah, that makes sense that they would tell you what that would include. So then next one is, there were, way back at the beginning, there was some, let's see, we added and/or merged departments. Who has the authority to do that? I'm not disagreeing with that we did that, just wondered. I don't recall that we actually had a board decision on that.
No, so on these particular ones, we have developed some departments, and in such, that has created the department in total. So for example, IT, separating and having a new, HR with the supervisor and whatnot, have talked about the need to hire an IT person. And so we've, in hiring that person, he doesn't really have a place to go. So the department is basically following, like, form follows function. The form of how we're gonna account for him in the budget is just changed because we have created the position. So, I mean, I do a little bit of it, trying to make it make the most sense, along with like the Michigan Chart of Accounts, and we hired the engineer, we then created the department, or the other administrative services, the township created, like Jody, who's our administrative manager, creating her, having her as the department head. She was in 248, which is kind of a department that is an overall kind of represents all of the different departments. Now that we have a department head, she needs to be able to manage her own expenditures. So again, the form of it is we created the department, that way we had a place to be able to better provide, more transparency and tracking that gives a person responsibility and accountability, if that makes sense.
Sure. Okay, and then I had one last question, and that is related to budget adjustments that we make during the year. And I'm wondering how much of that, well, when I see them, some of them totally make sense. So there's something came up and we just had to make a change to the budget for that. I'm wondering if there's does anyone look at how much of those budget adjustments maybe were because it wasn't, the departments didn't make a look forward enough? How much is it are we learning from the budget adjustments, I guess is what I'm asking.
No, it's a very fair, honest question. How well are we doing? So I have to say, I'm very proud of the department heads. In every board meeting, we send out the revenue expenditure report, which gives them the percentages, where they're at. They have to fill out budget amendment forms. In those forms, like you will see one coming out, there'll be an explanation on the right-hand side saying like why they need this budget. I can say typically it's because something's happened that we didn't anticipate, right? That's, we don't have a crystal ball in that. This year, what you're gonna see large budget adjustments. The biggest one, we secured for the township I'm rounding, but $700,000 in additional CARES Act money. Part of that grant requirement was none of it could be budgeted. So if, let's say, PD decided, hey, we wanted to buy something, we budgeted for it, the CARES Act money wouldn't apply. So the one that you guys are gonna see coming up in these next adjustments are that $700,000, and it'll be broken out per department, what we, each line item will have something on it, so it won't just be $700,000. Some of it will be for salaries for the hazard pay, so you'll see each hazard pay. But we do try to learn from, our different mistakes if we had a budgeting mistake, but we really, really have the opportunity to review on a bi-monthly basis where we're sitting. We have multiple budget amendments throughout the year, and when we're buying something big, a good question or something that, I know that you do. I mean, Kathy, you're amazing with looking at all the numbers. You come in my office quite a bit and sit down with me and hang out. But when a department head comes to the board for something large, is it budgeted? That's one of the questions that sits, on that, board agenda item, and will it need an amendment? And so every time a board or a department head looks to buy something, they need to answer that question, and they answer it in that area.
Okay, and you had used the word mistake. I wasn't even really looking. I don't usually see those as mistakes, in terms of, I'm sure we all make mistakes, but I guess I'm looking at, is some of that something that should be, some of those, could they be a function of replacement? I know some of the departments have depreciation, but like, say, for example, now the trustees all got a laptop. We never had one before. That's part of the CARES Act, correct?
Correct.
So are those we'll give it 5 years. That's a long life for a laptop. In 5 years, will we be budgeting for those again?
That's absolutely, we should be. That's something that the department head, our new IT person, each department head is required to look at their immediate needs and their future needs. So, and that communication between departments. So if, as one of the trustees, let's say, you're saying, all right, well, my computer's really acting up, maybe it's not gonna have as long of a life. We have great communication. Communicate that with the IT department, and then, we could budget that as a replacement maybe sooner than the scheduled time. But each department does do exactly what, that where we look out and put things on a schedule and a capital plan, and when we need things, multiple years out.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any further questions, maybe from board members or any updates from any department heads or add-ons?
Can't really hear you, Dan.
This thing,
Forgot to move the
yeah, we
other
gotta
mic.
move it back and forth.
Anything further from the board or from department heads that you'd like to add? All right, we're going to move on to item number 4 on the agenda, which is public comment. Have there been any public comments received via email?
There have been no public comments received via email.
All right, then we'll move on to board comments. Trustee Anderson, maybe I'll just call on.
None at this time. I had a question earlier and Vicki answered it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. We can circle back, and I wouldn't mind to have a quick discussion too with the board on this format, because we do have the next 2 meetings are scheduled to be like this. I'm hopeful maybe the 8th, because that's the date that the attorney has said that we can go back to in-person meetings on the 9th, and we have a meeting on the 8th. So let's move on to Trustee Demink.
Nope, I think it's going to be a working budget, and I think with the new board, with the addition of Treasurer Elliott, I think we can move forward and get through these things and just work our way through it. With the way the world is right now and this whole COVID thing, I think it's going to be a challenge for 2021 to see where we end up or where the government puts us from the people higher up the scale than us. So I think it's going to be a working challenge with all this pandemic, and if the vaccine comes out and stuff like that. So I still think we have a lot of challenges ahead of us. Thanks, Dan.
Trustee Vosberg.
Thank you. I'm not sure if you were asking about the format. This leaves a little to be desired, but on the other hand, it's working. I thought we had some good discussion here today. And I am very appreciative of all the work that has gone into the budget so far, all the department heads having to plan out what it is they're going to be doing for this year and years to come. I appreciate all the thought that goes into the budget process.
Clerk Barry.
Thanks, Dan. Well, I can say that, one of the things that I kept thinking of as we were going through the presentation, which, by the way, I do like the format. I like the presentation format as well, is what light years of change and difference it's made since 2012, when I first got my first budget from Supervisor Lovelock, and it was basically just a list of account numbers and dollar amounts, and that was pretty much it. And there was really not much explanation. There wasn't very much transparency there, and this is just night and day from that, and I really appreciate it. Particularly, I found it very helpful having the listings of the capital improvement projects that DPW put together. Thank you, Kevin, that was great. That's been very helpful for me in terms of determining, the direction on that budget, as well as some of the other projects and improvements that we're planning at the township as well. Helpful to separate that from operating on a daily basis. And I think it helps with the overall understanding of it, not only for the board members, but also for members of the public as well, who will look at this. So I like it, and I found it to be very helpful, easy to understand, and had all my questions answered. So thank you for a great job, everyone who was involved in the crafting of this budget and in the presentation as well. Thank you.
Treasurer, hold on, I passed you over. Treasurer Elliott.
Thank you, Supervisor. I appreciate everything that you guys have done. I have no questions. Those have been answered. And I know that you guys have worked very hard on this and great job. Thank you.
Thank you. The next steps, we will be having a public hearing on the December 8th board meeting with a presentation. There is a lot more to this budget. Obviously, we didn't touch on all the capital and all the projects, especially some of the higher profile pieces, the Brandenburg Shoreline project and some of the other facility upgrades, sidewalks, roads, paths. However, we have touched base on those consistently, I guess, for the last several years. We do have projects at a glance, and I did publish a project management meeting or post one of those, so there's a ton of information on it. I couldn't be prouder of how far our budget has come in the last 4 years, winning awards and the amount of work that Director Bauer puts in on these. Trustee Vosberg, a big chunk of this is capital and the timing of the capital. So a lot of times there'll be a budget amendment because you get a very large project and you have to make your best possible guess as to how much of that is going to be done in this fiscal year and how much is going to be done in next fiscal year. That's why those 3 budget amendments help with that the whole way. So I would urge you to just reach out to Director Bauer or myself as this moves forward, and we'll get forward. We'll move forward with our budget right on time at the beginning of December. Last item is a motion to adjourn. We do have our next scheduled board meeting is tomorrow, November 24th at 7 p.m. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Clerk
Support.
Berry, support by Trustee Demink to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed by saying nay. We are adjourned at 5:58 p.m. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.